Hello, and welcome to episode 10 of Becoming Bob. I'm Alex, and of course I'll be painting along with episode 10 of The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. I've got my 18 by 24 inch canvas there, horizontally oriented. And of course it's coated with a thin layer of liquid white. Just doing some crisscross strokes and kind of messing around some Prussian blue up there in the sky. It's important to keep from getting too uniform of a color up there. I want to leave some life in it. But you don't want to leave any hairs in it, so you want to get those out of there. You do want to have a good amount of blending, as you do of course want it to look natural. Now I've got just a little bit of phthalo green there that I'm mixing in my Prussian blue. And that'll be the color for my water there at the bottom half of the painting. I'm really focusing here on coming in straight and horizontal and even. I wasn't happy on the last painting with how my water turned out, and so it was something I really focused on for this painting, and I think it had good effects. Also tried to minimize the amount of white space between my sky and the water there. You'll see there is one space that kind of eludes me though. Switched out for my fan brush now, mixing some titanium white. It's just a little bit of that permanent red or bright red. I've seen it called both. And I'm just kind of messing that around up in the sky now, making some nice fluffy clouds. I really like this technique for clouds. Putting in multiple layers like this, leaving a little bit of dark space between them, just kind of fluffing them around up there. I think it really makes for some nice, realistic looking clouds. And it's one technique that's, at least in my experience, pretty easy to do early on, and really makes me feel a lot more accomplished when I've got a nice looking sky in a painting. Just making some big swirls, using all different sides on the brush. Just trying to give it some life and some uniqueness. See, I tried to go for holding my brush there, and that's what Bob was doing on his, but I decided not to try that quite yet. But I did drop my 2-inch brush when I went to go pick it up there. And that's a dry 2-inch brush that I'm going in with there, just to fluff those clouds up, give them a little bit more life, and make it look like the wind's really blowing them around up there. It's high altitude winds. Always nice to throw in a few sweeps like this too. And then of course you always have to blend it all in. I've got my palette knife out there, mixing some Van Dyke brown with Prussian blue and some titanium white, making kind of a gray color. A little bit more to lighten it up some more. And I'm trying to mix it pretty well, but not mix it completely, leaving some of that marbly look in there. Really adds a lot more to the colors when you put them onto the canvas. I'm just pressing that in there, trying to get as much paint worked into the canvas as I can. At the same time, I'm trying to make that mountain ridge line there realistic. Bob went with something a little bit lower profile than he does on some of his paintings for this one. But just uses the same techniques as he always does. Kind of working that paint in. Then picking up my 2-inch brush again and just kind of blending it down. Trying to blend it in the direction of the land so that everything's got the same contour to it, and it all kind of adds to the effect. So I'm going back in and pulling it down a little bit further here to try and get rid of some more of that white space between the sky and the water. But you can still see that little bit there on the right side, right above the mountains. That little bit kind of survives all the way through the painting. Picking up a little bit more of the white there, mixing it back in with my gray color to make a highlight, which I'll be putting on the light side of the mountains. And it's these highlight layers, the highlight and low light, that really make the mountains pop and make them look like they're three-dimensional and going off in the distance and textured and rocky. Trying to keep with the contours there. Now back in with my 2-inch brush. Just kind of tap in some misty areas there. Help blend everything together. Nice and gentle. Trying to do this without, messing up all the nice contours and stuff that I just put in there. Now with some even more white, going over and adding even more highlights. Bob talked about how this was supposed to be really thin paint going on over these mountains, but he didn't mix any liquid white in with it, and yeah, I mean, mine went on really thick. I think it looks good, but yeah, mine definitely wasn't as thin as he kind of made it sound like it should have been. Of course, when you're doing these, you want to pull the paint across in a way that kind of makes it break, and have little bubbles and things like that in it. And that's what really makes the shadows and the highlights and the, all the little bits in there to give the mountains a lot of character. And another layer of highlights. Like I said, these mountains ended up being pretty thick. some shadow in. Just tapping it in there, misting everything together, and blending it. Now picking up some liquid white, mixing in there where I had my cloud color going. Now that I've put those really thick mountains on there, I'm going to come in with some thinner cloud paint, kind of pull some clouds down in front of them, try and have them kind of pouring over the top down into the valleys. I had to be really careful because it did go on pretty well over most of the paint, but the liquid white did try and pick up some of that gray mountain color and pull it back up into the sky, so I was having to be real careful. Try and make sure I was just transferring the white from the brush onto the canvas and not picking up any of that gray. And this was just about impossible. I mean, trying to blend this in here, there was a few loose hairs that were making contact really with the paint. And even then it was hard to keep from just completely smushing it out with as much liquid white as those clouds were made out of. Just cleaning the brush. Let that kind of air dry for a minute. And now I'm picking up some sap green, some alizarin crimson, mixing those together. A little brown and a little blue too. Make a nice dark color there. Background vegetation color. Now just going in and put that in to put a layer in front of the base of the mountains. Of course, this layer will be quite a ways off, so I don't want it to be too detailed. And now I've got that 2-inch brush out again, pulling down some reflections. When you're doing these reflections that you really define where the edge of that water is going to be. So you have to be really deliberate about where you start pulling down. You're going to end up with just a straight line that doesn't look natural and it doesn't look realistic. Got my second 1-inch brush there. I've got my highlight color. Mix some liquid white in with some green and yellow. On this painting, I really tried to make an effort to get the liquid white mixed in whenever I was making these highlight colors to avoid having, white splotches on there. I think for the most part, I did a pretty good job. A few little highlights down there into the reflections. Just cleaning up my fan brush there a little bit, because I'm gonna use that now to make some little pine trees. Some blue with my green color to make it nice and dark. Evergreeny. I'm really trying to pull that fan brush to a nice tip there so that when I put this on here, I can make my lines nice and thin and really control where the paint's going on the canvas. See, I'm really focusing because my zigzag pine trees like this in the past have been really fat and squat looking. And they kind of just look like Christmas trees. So on these I really tried to make them a lot taller and thinner looking, like the kind of pine trees you would see out in nature. Giving that one a little friend there. Yeah, because I haven't mixed any liquid white in with this dark color, putting it on over the many layers of mountain that I have kind of blended together there wasn't the easiest thing. It didn't want to go on super smooth. Now I'm just mixing up some brown with some white to make a light tan color, a sandy color. Just really mixing it up there. Mixing a little bit of the liquid white in with it too. Not really sure where to clear off my knife. Now I'm just kind of laying in a little bit of a bank there. Nice little sandy area in underneath those trees. Off my brush or off my knife there, and pick up some just pure liquid white to kind of cut in some water lines there, and then cut in some sticks and twigs, and actually at that distance more like trunks. Just trying to be deliberate, make it look natural. Now back in with my 1-inch brush. Now I've got two 1-inch brushes going here. I've got my dark background color and then my light highlight color. Now here in the foreground, doing the same technique I just did with the pine trees in the background, except instead of using the fan brush, I'm obviously using the 1-inch brush. And you can see what I was talking about there, about getting that dark color to go on in front of the mountains. Kind of see in the middle of the tree there, the paint just didn't transfer on nearly as well. Now to give him a little friend. And there's that blank spot there, just to the right of that tree. Putting in some foliage there, and you can see that kind of blank spot there at the base of the mountains, and I'm making sure to get that covered fairly well. But that one up there right above it, I just didn't see. Not sure why the video jumps just then. Just one of the mysteries of digital recording, I guess. Putting in some trunks there. While at the same time trying to work pretty fast. And kind of falling behind Bob. But you know, I always fall behind a little bit. Just adding in those highlights. Real carefully trying to add in a few highlights there into the reflection. just picking up some pure Van Dyke brown there with the knife. Try and put in a darker colored earth underneath these plants. And as always, just trying to lay it in, following a slope. Now with that sandy color I used in the background, just putting in some highlights then, the top of that dark brown. It look like stones and sand and everything mixed together there. And now with some straight liquid white, just getting in those water lines. And a few sticks. Alright, some more of that Van Dyke brown, and just gonna really just kind of bring it across the painting there. Just trying to give it a nice natural line there, and now just trying to fill in all the space there at the bottom. Trying to cover all the spaces I can while still keeping the terrain kind of going in the same direction. Now I'm going in with more of a highlight color to give it a sandy look. Good camera work here. Considering adding a third camera angle that would help with shots like that, but I wouldn't expect to see anything until next season. Alright, now back in with my dark color 1-inch brush, and you can see I picked up a little bit more blue there, because with every layer you come forward in the painting, you want to get a little bit darker. Just kind of maximizes the depth appearance. Just, putting on a little foliage there. Switching out now for the highlight brush. Really see the canvas moving from this angle. That's one thing I'm not real happy with, is my canvas choice for these paintings. For the paint and the paint brushes, and obviously the palette there, and liquid white, and things like that, I went with the Bob Ross brand. But for my canvases, I kind of went more the bargain route, and I think it really shows. You can see here how it's really moving around, and I feel like if it was a little bit tighter, it would give me a little bit more control with the paint, especially towards the center of the painting. And the frame transfers through a lot with these, and so I think in the future, after I've used these canvases, I'm going to switch to something a little bit nicer. Alright, just cutting in trunks and sticks and stems, and give everything a lot more depth and life to it, structure. Going back in there to the Van Dyke Brown. And starting low. Kind of working my way up. I'll build a little tree there. This is one of those shots where that third camera angle I'm thinking about would really come in handy. Not so much here though. This is nice and clear. Just trying to pull the paint around to kind of give it a rounded effect for the trunk. Now putting some leaves on there. Again, just trying to think about where I'm putting things, you know, where the branches would naturally go and how the leaves would naturally grow on them. I'm just mixing up some more of that highlight color. Trying to keep it from being the same everywhere in the painting. Because of course your highlight colors are not the same everywhere in nature. Otherwise fall would be a lot less spectacular. Kind of putting those highlight little bits up and to the right of the darker areas, because that's the direction the light's coming from. Now just going in, I've got my script liner brush there. Picked up a little bit of linseed oil and some Van Dyke Brown. Pull it real thin like an ink. Now just kind of going on and making some vegetation. Trying to, as usual, keep it as natural looking as possible. And trying to keep things looking to scale. So as I'm putting these up closer to the front, you know, trying to make them look bigger than the ones in the back. And then just kind of pushing everything back. There's vegetation around the foot of those, of that tree there, and covering up that last little bit of corner down there. All in all, I'm pretty happy with how this painting turned out. Really like how the sky looks. I think my mountains turned out pretty nice and realistic. I think the water looks great. My reflections look really good. I think I did a lot better on my pine trees. And so yeah, all around, I'm pretty happy with this painting. Got that one little white spot there. I may have gone in after finishing filming this episode and done a little bit of a repair there, which, you know, I'm not supposed to do, but it just bugged me so much I couldn't help myself. Now just with that linseed oil, some permanent red, just adding my signature there. Thanks for watching episode 10 of Becoming Bob. I'm Alex. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. You know, I'm just a small channel, and I can use all the help I can get. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.